The show begins with a girl named Ju-won. We see her teacher teaching the alphabets and asking each student to provide a word that starts with a random letter. While the other students give plenty of words, Ju-won struggles and can't give the correct answer. The teacher then points to the word window, but instead of saying window, Ju-won blurts out widow, which was actually her dad's situation. Her mother had passed away, and she shouts to everyone that a widower can do anything, including giving her a brother. The teacher is left confused about how to explain what a widower is to the children. Next, we see Jong, Ju-won's father. As we see, Jong runs a small restaurant and is an excellent cook. When Ju-won comes home from school, Jong picks her up, and the other kids tease her by asking if her dad will really give her an older brother. This angers Jong, and he asks Ju-won, who told her that he is a widower. Ju-won mentions their old neighbor, Samin, sitting nearby. Jong explains to her that she shouldn't believe everything Samin says, as she could lie too. The two of them then go for a walk, and Jong tells her that if she truly wants an older brother, he would need to go on a blind date, though neither of them fully understand what that means. As they walk, they see a family moving into their building, the family of Mr. Kim, a police officer. Mr. Kim has a son named Sana, and when Ju-won sees him, she runs up to him and shakes his hand, calling him Big Brother. However, Sana pulls his hand away, uncomfortable with her actions. Jong talks to Mr. Kim and invites him to his restaurant. He asks if Mr. Kim's family consists of just 3 people, since Jong and his daughter live on the 2nd floor while Mr. Kim's family is moving to the 3rd. Mr. Kim laughs, but his wife, overhearing, becomes irritated and asks why they are talking about their family so much. At home, Sana's mother continues to shout at Mr. Kim and Sana, throwing household items in frustration because she didn't want to move to this new place. Hearing the commotion, neighbors call the police. When an officer arrives and sees Mr. Kim, they quickly apologize for not realizing it was his house. Mr. Kim asks them to meet him at the police station the next day. As the officers leave, they discuss how Mr. Kim's daughter passed away recently, which is why the family moved here. Hearing this, the neighbors become less concerned about the argument and return to their homes. Jong later explains to Ju-won that she should never bring up Sana's sister, as it could hurt him in the same way it pains Ju-won to hear about her mother. Just then, Jong sees Sana sitting on the stairs and invites him inside, but Sana declines and heads home. Then we see Mr. Kim talking to his son, reassuring that Sana's mom is not angry, just hurting, which is why she reacts this way. The next day, Jong sits with Samin, who shares that Sana's sister died last year, and his mother blames him for it, which is why he remains quiet. Hearing this, Jong feels sorry for Sana. We later see Sana sitting outside her home, eating raw noodles because her mother didn't cook for her. Ju-won notices this and tells her dad, who quickly prepares a delicious dish for her. Ju-won takes the food to Sana, but he still doesn't want to talk to them, quietly returning home to eat. The following day, Samin arranges a blind date for Jong with a woman named Miss Kong, who arrives with her son, Hye-jun. As they approach Jong's house, Jong accidentally spills water on them while cleaning outside the restaurant. Ju-won returns from school and everyone gathers at Jong's house. When Ju-won learns that her dad might be getting married and she could have a stepmother, she protests loudly, insisting she only wants a brother, not a mom. Samin takes Ju-won and Hye-jun outside so Miss Kang and Jong can talk. Miss Kang is impressed with Jong's clean house and cooking skills. She feels guilty for not being able to take better care of her own son, as she is often too busy with work and doesn't know how to cook. Meanwhile, Samin, suffering from stomach pain, rushes to the washroom, leaving the children to wait. Ju-won, still upset, leaves Hye-jun alone, not wanting to talk, and heads back home. When Sana leaves, Hye-jun follows her, trying to talk to her. Meanwhile, Ju-won overhears 2 boys walking on the street gossiping at Sana. They claim that befriending Sana would bring bad luck because children without a mom or dad are unlucky. Hearing this, Ju-won angrily confronts the boys, but they push her down. Hye-jun joins the fight to defend her, and eventually, Sana steps in as well, hitting the boys. The fight escalates until their parents arrive and break it up. One of the boys' mothers demands that Ju-won apologize to her daughter. However, Ju-won stands her ground and explains what the boy had said about her. Embarrassed, the boy's mother realizes she had taught her child those ideas and decides to drop the matter. As she prepares to leave, Jong steps in and asks the boy's mom and daughter to apologize to Sana as well, which they do before leaving. After the fight, Hyejun smiles at Jong, clearly beginning to see him as a father figure. He wanted to stay with Jong, and Jong invites him and Sana over for lunch. At the meal, Jong serves Hyejun repeatedly, while Juwon amusingly takes food from her dad's bowl and shares it with Sana. Everyone enjoys the moment together, but Jong later escorts Hyejun and his mom to the bus stop, asking Sana to take care of them. Juwon and Sana go to the park to play, where Juwon teases him by chasing him with an earthworm, causing Sana to run and laugh for the first time in a while. Watching from the window, Sana's mom is clearly displeased. Afterward, Sana visits Juwon's house, and they look at a family album. Seeing Juwon's mother in the pictures, Juwon explains to Sana that if he misses his sister, he can always look at her photo. Later that day, Sana, now missing his sister, follows Juwon's advice, staring at the family photo and eventually falling asleep. Meanwhile, at the bus stop, Miss Kang is with Hyejun, and Jong has packed some food for them. However, Miss Kang receives a surprising phone call. Back at home, Juwon tells her dad she doesn't want him to remarry, and Jong reassures her that he wouldn't do anything to hurt her feelings. The next day, Jong learns that Miss Kang changed her phone number after leaving. Samin suspects that something bad happened to Miss Kang because she seemed to like Jong and his family before. It's later revealed that Miss Kang is indeed in trouble. She leaves Hyejun with her aunt, promising to come back after earning enough money, and departs. The next scene we see Mr. Kim and his friend coming to the John's restaurant, where Samin advises Mr. Kim to take his wife out to cheer her up and prevent further arguments. Juwon also tells Mr. Kim that she invites Sana to lunch with them again, to which Mr. Kim happily agrees, hoping it would make Sana feel better. Jong receives a call from Miss Kang asking for financial help, and he agrees to assist. She gives him the address of Hyejun's aunt, and when Jong arrives, he finds the house in terrible condition. Hyejun has been living in squalor, surviving on instant noodles. Jong feels heartbroken and gives Hyejun the food he brought. Jong asks Hyejun's aunt if he can take care of Hyejun until his mother returns. The aunt agrees, and Hyejun, already fond of Jong, is happy to go with him. Meanwhile, Sana returns home from school and confides in Juwon that his mom is not truly angry, but in pain, which is why she doesn't speak to him much. However, when Sana arrives home, he finds his parents fighting again. His father had planned to take his mom for a walk, but when she found a family photo in Sana's drawer, she became upset. She blamed Sana for their daughter's death, accusing him of doing nothing to save her when both children were alone in the house. Now, every time they interact with the neighbors, she becomes more upset, especially when Sana seems happy with Juwon. Mr. Kim tries to reason with her, reminding her that Sana is only 8 years old, but she refuses to listen and threatens to leave the house. Sana, devastated, begs his mother not to leave. He promises he won't play with Juwon anymore, won't eat at their house, and won't be happy, but she locks herself in her room, leaving Sana in tears. Juwon, on the other hand, is not pleased about Hyejun staying with them. She becomes furious when she hears Hyejun refer to her father as Dad, especially when Jong agrees to let him do so. Her jealousy intensifies, and she becomes angry with both her father and Hyejun. During dinner, Hyejun was eating quickly, savoring the food since he hadn't had such a meal in a long time. Juwon, feeling jealous and worried, lies on the floor and starts crying. She fears that Hyejun's mom will join them soon, a situation she dreads. Meanwhile, we see the 3 children in their homes. Hyejun is delighted to be with his dad, but Sana is restless all night, troubled by thoughts of his mother. The next day, Sana tells Juwon that he won't play with her or eat with her anymore, leaving her heartbroken. Just then, Sana's mom steps out of the house with her bags, preparing to leave. Juwon, noticing this, asks if Sana can come play with her. Sana's mom angrily asks if she considers him her brother. When Juwon confidently replies, yes, Sana's mom becomes even more furious, telling her to keep Sana because she's leaving him forever anyway. Juwon, thrilled, doesn't realize the gravity of the situation, but Sana is left crying as he watches his mom walk away. From that moment on, Jong takes on the responsibility of caring for all 3 children, Juwon, Hyejun, and Sana. Time passes, and the 3 grow up together, transitioning into high school. Hyejun becomes a basketball player, Sana excels academically, and Juwon remains her spirited self. Their household now includes Jong, his 2 older brothers, and Mr. Kim. The whole family often gathers for breakfast together. One morning, the brothers discuss their first day at high school. Ju-won brings up the idea of formal adoption, suggesting that one of the older brothers should adopt them so they all have the same last name and become a united family, even in paperwork. Sana teases her, saying that since he's the oldest among the three of them, he should be the one to adopt everyone, which would make him their uncle. The siblings laugh it off, but Ju-won suddenly stands up, frustrated. She insists that having a common family name is essential for their peace of mind. The scene shifts to their childhood. Back then, Sana often brought snacks to school for Ju-won and Hye-jun, including a limited edition snack that Hye-jun particularly loved. Ju-won brought the snack to school one day to share with her best friend, but another girl sitting nearby accused her of stealing it, saying she had searched many stores for it. The argument escalates, and Ju-won becomes a target for bullying. Classmates start sending letters to Ju-won and Hye-jun through her, and when neither of them respond, the bullying worsens. Students start spreading rumors that Ju-won isn't really their sister, some suggesting she likes Hye-jun or Sana, and that she deliberately withholds letters meant for them. Hurt and isolated, Ju-won feels trapped, powerless against the bullying. Determined to protect herself in high school, Ju-won decides that a shared surname will strengthen her standing. She seeks advice from Hye-jun on the bus about how to avoid being bullied. Sana suggests she call a teacher, but Hye-jun tells her she needs to project an image of toughness or craziness to keep bullies away. If they succeed in bullying her once, they'll never stop. Taking his advice, when two senior girls approach Ju-won at school and give her love letters for Hye-jun and Sana, she insists they sign a contract saying they won't speak to her until they receive replies. Angered, one of the girls pushes her down, mocking her for not having a real family. Remembering Hye-jun's words, Ju-won decides to act crazier than the bullies. She begins counting aloud, deciding whom to be crazy with first. Infuriated, one girl raises her hand to hit her, but Ju-won grabs it and starts dragging her through the campus until they reach a pond. As they struggle, Jae-won's foot slips, and she falls into the dirty water. Everyone bursts out laughing, and the embarrassed Jae-won gets up, dripping wet. Ju-won plays innocent, pretending the girls were only trying to talk to her. Seeing this, the girls call her crazy, exactly what Ju-won had hoped for. She smiles, knowing she's achieved her goal. Her best friend, Park, rushes to Hye-jun on the basketball court to tell him about Ju-won's stunt. Sana's classmate also informs him, and both boys race to find her. Hye-jun arrives first and uses his t-shirt to clean her up. Sana tells the bullies to leave before he reports them. Afterward, Ju-won changes into clean clothes, and Sana angrily scolds Hye-jun for giving her advice to act crazy. But when Ju-won joins them, Sana stops, and they all board the bus home together. During the ride, everyone is disturbed by Ju-won's lingering odor from the pond. Hye-jun, barely able to contain his laughter, pulls her close, and they all walk home together. On the way, they run into an elderly couple from their building. The couple, pitying the children, comments on how tragic it is that Hye-jun and Sana are living without their mothers. Hearing this, Sana and Hye-jun feel hurt, but Ju-won cheerfully tells them that she's happy to have such special brothers. Her words warm their hearts, and they head home. Later, at dinner, Ju-won brings up adoption again. She believes that having a common family name will be beneficial for them in the future. Sana receives a call from his maternal grandmother but doesn't answer. When his grandmother calls Mr. Kim instead, he steps aside to talk, causing Sana to leave the table. Ju-won is upset and snaps at Mr. Kim, asking why Sana's grandmother still calls when his mother has remarried and is never coming back. Mr. Kim gently tells her to let it go. After dinner, Jong saves his ex-mother-in-law's number under ex-mother-in-law and decides not to keep in touch, realizing it's time to focus on his own children. Meanwhile, Hye-jun and Ju-won try to cheer Sana up by sneaking into his room with rice balls. Sitting on his bed, they tease him while he tries to study, but soon they catch a strange scent. Ju-won realizes it's her new shampoo and, annoyed, asks why Sana didn't tell them he was using their shared shampoo. He reminds them that they all bought it together during a buy one, get one sale. After some playful banter, Sana throws them out of his room. Before leaving, Hye-jun jokingly asks if she'll treat him like Oppa, prompting Ju-won to repeatedly call him Oppa and claims she'll charge him every time she uses the word. The next day, Sana's class teacher, impressed with his academic performance, suggests he apply to Seoul University, known as the top institution in the country. However, Sana feels conflicted as he doesn't want to leave home and would rather attend a nearby medical school. The teacher advises him to discuss this with his father. All of this is overheard by Jong, a classmate who invites Sana to the music room to talk privately. As they leave, Jong and Park notice them, and Jong is about to follow when Park stops her, telling her that Sana and Jong are dating. This revelation shocks Jong, as the entire school seems to know, but she's the last to find out. In the music room, Sana asks Jong why she wanted to talk privately, worried about rumors. Jong reveals she has feelings for Sana and wants them to go to Seoul University together. Sana rejects her, insisting she should follow her own dreams without involving him. Upset, Jong remains angry with Sana for the rest of the day. After the school, Jae-won confronts Sana, accusing him of hiding his relationship with Jong. Implying that Sana doesn't truly see Jong as family, Sana explains that for him, family isn't about legal documents but about genuine bonds, which leaves Jong conflicted. Meanwhile, Hyejun is practicing basketball when he notices a man taking pictures of him from a distance. Hyejun chases the man, who drops his camera and flees. Upon examining the camera, Hyejun realizes the man had been taking photos of him. His friend suggests the man might have been hired by his mother, sparking memories of the day she left. Later, Hyejun's aunt visits Jong with gifts for the children. Jong thanks her, but it's clear that Samin dislikes both Hyejun's aunt and his mother, Ms. Kang, as she feels they didn't care for Hyejun properly. Outside, Hyejun greets his aunt warmly. As she prepares to leave, she advises him to always repay Jong's kindness, as he has taken great care of them. Back at home, Jong refuses to eat dinner, upset with Sana. Jong guesses she must have had a fight with Sana, prompting her to storm off. Sana follows her to apologize and clarifies that Jong isn't his girlfriend, but actually Hyejun's ex. This eases Jong's mood, and she comes back to join the family for dinner, although she remains distant from Hyejun, upset that she wasn't told the truth earlier. The next day, at school, Jong begins to ignore Hyejun, and he asks Sana what he told her. Sana explains he revealed the truth about Hyejun's past relationship with Jong. Hyejun, realizing that Jong wants to rekindle their relationship, now sees through her intentions. In the past, she had broken up with Hyejun for Sana, but when Sana rejected her, she tried to return to Hyejun. This time, Hyejun decides not to get involved, wanting to protect his sister's feelings. Jong confides in Park about Hyejun's past relationship, and Park, who has feelings for Hyejun, becomes momentarily saddened but quickly cheers up when she hears they've broken up. Later, Hyejun spots the man who had taken his pictures. He learns from the school's watchman that the man was actually a private detective. Confused, Hyejun wonders who would hire someone to spy on him, and soon after, he thinks he sees his mother. He follows her, calling out, but realizes it's a different woman. As the day ends, Sana and Jae-won gather for dinner, where Jong serves Hyejun extra soup, knowing he needs energy for his upcoming basketball match. Jong, still feeling slighted, accuses Jong of favoritism, but he insists he treats them all equally. The following day at school, Hyejun is practicing basketball again when a man arrives in a sports car holding a photo of him. After matching the face in the picture, the man introduces himself as Hyejun's father. Shocked and speechless, Hyejun stands frozen, bringing the episode to a dramatic close. After that, Hyejun becomes anxious and wonders how his father arose and where he came from, since he had lived his whole life without knowing anything about his father. At that moment, he finds out that his father is a proud man. He says, "Undoubtedly, your mother told you that your father is dead, but it's important for you to know that your father is alive and is a wealthy man from whom you can benefit from the money I possess." However, for Hyejun, none of that matters. The only thing that matters to him is that he has a father. Then he asks how it is possible that after all these years, his father claims he did not know that his mother had been pregnant. His father explains that she hid the pregnancy and never told him that he was a son. At that moment, Hyejun asks how his father found out he had a son. At that time, Hyejun's father feels anxious and doesn't know how to respond and says he has a lot of work to do. He gives him a card and says that whenever he needs him, he can reach him at this address. After that, he leaves and speaks on the phone to someone saying, "Hyejun asked me about this, and I don't know what to respond. This topic is not as simple as I thought." On the other hand, Hyejun is thinking about what he heard and cannot believe he has a father. When his friends notice he is unusually quiet, they decide to cancel their training because of it, but Hyejun refuses and insists on continuing with the training. Meanwhile, Juwon, who is in class, gathers the message that Sana and Hyejun sent to the girl he likes. She also retrieves the exam results, and we see she has a bad results as she always does. However, Park sees a paper with Juwon's name on it, and they all become shocked, but eventually they find out that unknown person has sent the message to Juwon, and that person is the first one that Juwon feels something for him. Juwon then goes out to read the message, and we see that person is someone who loves physics because he wrote, "When I see you, my heart races like that of a running horse. When a connection forms between us, we will be like X and Y." He speaks like a researcher, not someone who loves to send messages. Juwon is very happy because finally someone has noticed and cared about her, and then she approaches her brother and asks, "You think you are the only ones who got messages?" On the other hand, Park arrives at the basketball court to see Hyejun, and when she sees him, she hears his friends talking about how Hyejun's father visited today. Then, Park sees Hyejun exiting the court, looking troubled and not knowing what to do. At the same time, Juwon is following Sana, feeling very happy. Sana is confused why she is so happy, and therefore he decides to change her mood and asks about the exam results, but Juwon mentions that something more important happened, which is that a love message was sent. But Sana does not believe that a message was sent specifically to her, especially when she searches for the message and cannot find it. Sana says too, "Are you pretending that a message was sent to you because you are upset that no message has ever been sent to you?" But Juwon tells the incidento to her father, telling that a love message was sent to her, and her father believes his daughter and is happy that she found someone who cares about her. He says, "Don't be upset about Sana. I'm sure he believed that your words is true. When you get the message, just tease him." But even so, Juwon thinks that her studies are more important now than love. But she is someone without a specific goal and just says, "I want to work with you at the restaurant and I don't want to study." Her father, John, says, "Of course you must like something and you need to find what you are passionate about." At the end of the day, Hyejun arrives at the restaurant and John was about to close the restaurant and they will go home together. Hyejun intends to tell Jun what happened today, but he can't bring himself to do it and feels that it might upset John. When they reach home, Sana feels Hyejun is not feeling normal. After dinner, he approaches him and asks what happened. Then, Hyejun tells him everything that happened and says, "Even though I am glad that I have a father, I do not want to live with him because I fear that he is a bad person." At that moment, Sana says, "Perhaps that person is sick and wants something from us." Then Hyejun responds that the solution is to take care of his aunt because she knows about the previous relationship between his father and mother. The next day, Juwon and Park were searching the whole school for the person who sent the message, but they cannot find the physics teacher who wrote the love message. For Juwon, it is not important who the message writer is, she just wants to tease Sana. When they go outside, they don't find him on the field or anywhere in the school. Meanwhile, Sana and Hyejun go to the place where Hyejun's aunt works, and he asks if she knows the person on this card. His aunt starts to cry and says, "I know him. He is your father. He knows your mother was pregnant, but unfortunately, he didn't want to acknowledge that the child she was pregnant with was Hyejun, and he broke up with her." His mother tried many times to contact him, but he changed numbers and left the place. It turns out he married another wealthy woman shortly after and left behind a child he didn't acknowledge. Hyejun's aunt says, "If you want to live with that person, I wouldn't be your aunt, and I don't know you." She tells him that this man is selfish, and his presence now is not a good thing. Hyejun says his aunt should not worry. "That person I will not live with him." When they leave, Hyejun feels confusion and oppression and wants to rip up the card, but Sana stops him and says, "You should know after all these years what he wants. Then just as you need to know, after that, rip the card up and regret it." On the other hand, Juwon is staying home feeling bored since neither of them is home to bother them. Just as she sees them coming, she rushes over and asks, "How old are you?" But neither one answers, and she realizes they are both dating from two different girls. At that moment, Juwon gets upset when they refuse to tell her where they are going and feels that they are planning something. Then Sana suddenly remembers Hyejun's words and recalls his mother and sister, and he also struggling to forget his sister's death and his mother's words. The next day, since it is a holiday, Ju-won calls Park and says, "Come to my house because I am alone here." When Park arrives, she finds Hyejun's room completely mixed in. On the other hand, Sana and Hyejun encounter Hyejun's father, and immediately Hyejun asks him, "What part of my body do you want me to give you?" His father smiles and tells him that he is completely healthy like other 30-year-olds. Then Hyejun asks, "Since you're fine, what do you want after all these years that you needed me?" He requests him to tell the truth because his aunt has discovered that his wife was pregnant and gave birth to a boy named Hyejun. His mother has tried many times to find him, but she could never catch him, and she knows that you are here. What made you decide to find us now? At that moment, his father feels like he has failed and is forced to tell the truth. He tells him he is a wealthy man with many houses and cars, but one thing is missing, and that is a child he has given birth to. Therefore, his wife's relatives complain that when she died, they should take all the wealth he has. But what he is saying is a lie, and he tells him there is a son I have who lives in America and is 19 years old. He immediately asks Hyejun to go to America and tells him that he has prepared everything, saying, "Your name, Hyejun, will be changed to one from America. At that moment, my wife's family cannot take my wealth from me, and you will become my official heir." However, Hyejun refuses to leave until he pays the money first. Then they arrive at the beach, and Hyejun is upset, saying that it came out worse than he expected. Sana advises him not to think about that and to forget it all. Hyejun asks Sana to tell him what happened with Jun. Sana agrees, but who should Hyejun expect? His father arrives at the restaurant and speaks to Jun disrespectfully, saying, "I am Hyejun's father, and I want to thank you for taking care of my son so beautifully all these years." He then hands Jun money as a reward for taking care of his son. That money, mostly coming from what Hyejun has just given, he doesn't wait for Jun to respond before saying, "In any case, Hyejun is coming with me to America and he might return to Korea again." Jun is shocked by what he hears and gets angry at that moment. At that time, Ju-won and her friend Park arrive to greet Hyejun's father, but when they see the tense atmosphere, they decide to leave. Jun gets angry at Hyejun's father, while at that moment, Ju-won and Park see Hyejun and Sana and tell his father that he is with a man in the restaurant. However, they show no interest, but when Park mentions that he resembles Hyejun, they hurry to the restaurant and both girls follow behind. When they arrive at the restaurant, Hyejun's father has already left. Jun asks Hyejun to speak to him privately, and everyone leaves the premises. At that moment, Ju-won tries to find out from Sana what happened, but Sana changes the subject. On the other hand, Jun sits down with Hyejun and asks him why he does not tell him what happened. He tells him that he is happy to have a father who wants to take him and that he is a wealthy man who will provide a good life for him, but Jun is angry and says, "I have loved you and I am ready to take care of you for the rest of my life." At that moment, Hyejun is crying and says that he is afraid he may abandon him, and they embrace. Hyejun tells him he does not want to follow his father because he knows that he is a selfish person who only loves himself. At that point, Ju-won manages to extract information from Sana, and she tells him that she is very happy when she realizes that Hyejun has a family, but she gets upset when she finds out that he is such a bad person. At the same time, Hyejun comes crying, and Sana and Ju-won try to calm him down. At that moment, Jun sits with Hyejun's father and expresses his readiness to take care of Hyejun if he does not want to go with him. He adds that he is also willing to support her in any way, even if it means selling the restaurant for that purpose. Then his father leaves angrily and goes to a hotel, but accidentally bumps into the bag of a woman who is there without apologizing as he enters the hotel. Fortunately, that woman is Sana's mother, who has come from Seoul to visit, bringing with her a girl who looks like her deceased daughter. At that moment, the girl is very happy and says, "Finally, I see my big brother." She asks her mother if her elder brother will love her, and her mother assures her, saying, "Of course, he will love you very much." Sana looks like she is about to feel disappointed again. At that time, the three siblings are together discussing Hyejun's situation. Suddenly, Ju-won announces that she has received a message from someone special. We see Hyejun happy because finally she found someone who cares for her, but Sana sees anger and resentment in his eyes and does not know why. Afterward, the three of them begin to joke around, But when Sana arrives home, he is unable to focus on his studies because he remembers everything that happened to his sister, his mother's words, and everything that has taken place recently. When he sees what Hyejun's father has done, he realizes that Hyejun's father and his mother are both selfish people who play with the emotions of others and cannot take responsibility, blaming others for the things they have done. At that time, Sana feels his mother is still in the city. The next day, while Park and Juwon are headed to school, they discuss how they could find out who sent the message. At that moment, Sana becomes angry at Juwon, feeling resentment. Thus, she and Hyejun decide to find out who sent the message before Juwon does. They arrive at school and start searching for the boy who sent the message. Hyejun manages to find the boy who entered the classroom while the students were coming in and who left the note. The boy is of the same age as Juwon and is handsome, excelling in his studies, yet he is very shy and has many girls crushing on him, but he himself has no interest in any of them. After searching, Juwon and her friends Park discover who the boy is that sent the message. When they see him sitting in the classroom, Juwon feels excited. When she notices he hasn't written his name on the message, she realizes that he is quite shy. Therefore, she decides that in step 1, she will take the initiative and say, "I like you." When she approaches the classroom to enter, she suddenly bumps into a boy who's coming out, and instead of him catching her, she ends up holding on to him. At that moment, Juwon feels very shy. The boy says to her, "I wanted to come over to tell you that I like you, but since you appeared, we should just admit that we both have a crush on each other." At that moment, Sana, Hyejun, and Park are watching what's happening. Then the boy, looking more shy, invites Juwon to have lunch together at the restaurant. We see that he doesn't like spicy food. He puts water into the spaghetti to drown out the spice. After they finish their meal to enjoy something sweet, he offers Juwon a drink but refuses to bring cake because he does not like cake or anything sweet. Although there is no connection between them, when they leave, the shy boy tells Juwon that his family is very healthy. He mentions that his mother told him, "If you want to have smart kids, you should marry a girl from a healthy family with both parents alive." At that moment, Juwon says, "But I also come from a healthy family." But the boy then comments, "No, you only live with your father. Your mother has passed away. Surely you have psychological issues." Juwon is taken aback by this and asks, "Do you have a sister?" The boy replies, "No, I am all alone." Juwon responds, "My father taught me that a person with only one parent is usually selfish since they have everything handed to them and cannot take responsibilities." She adds, "I have 2 siblings. My family is larger than yours." And she tells him that she doesn't want to talk to him anymore, not even to say hello. Afterward, she heads home, and at that time, the whole family is having dinner. They start wondering what Juwon will do at that hour. When Juwon arrives, she begins to eat with them, and everyone understands that something is wrong, especially when she arrives late and seems moody. When they ask her what happened, she replies, "We just broke up because I dislike spicy food and carrots. Those are her favorites." They let it slide, knowing that something has happened, even if Sana is happy that they parted. However, she asks if she can say something hurtful. Juwon replies, "No." The next day at school, all the girls discover that she has been dating the shy boy, and they ask Juwon how she could have turned him down since he is the boy that all the girls like. The girls say, "We didn't expect you two to end up together." At that moment, the boy approaches Juwon in front of everyone and apologizes for being rude. He says, "I don't mean that," and asks for a second chance, wanting them to become friends until they get to know each other better. Then Juwon says loudly in front of everyone that, "If you tell the person you spoke to me about, it means you want us to be friends. And I agree, and I will come forward." At that moment, all the school students want to know what the shy boy said. After school, Sana sees her mother standing outside, and she asks if they can talk. Although Sana feels that meeting is going to be tough, she doesn't back down and engages with her. Meanwhile, Juwon rushes out to tell Hyejun what happened. Sana and his mother meet for coffee. And Sana asks his mother, "What brings you here? Why didn't you look for me after all this time? You didn't even call me once? No one came looking for me except my grandmother." Then his mother pretends not to have heard anything he said and starts talking about her husband and daughter. She says she wants Sana to come to the hotel because her daughter wants to see him. When she tells Sana that his sister wants to see him, Sana replies angrily, "Why do you hate me so much?" And he says, "Do you want me to come to meet the daughter of another man?" At that moment, Hyejun and Juwon are outside waiting for something to happen. However, Hyejun suddenly gets angry and says he doesn't want to get involved in anything work-related, and he leaves. While walking, Hyejun remembers how much his mother cared for him and how she left him and how she promised to return but never did. At that time, Hyejun feels resentment and a sense of abandonment from Sana because his mother left while promising to return, but still hasn't. On the other hand, Sana's mother is coming out with sincerity and she says, "For all these years, have you forgotten what you did to your sister? You were the reason for her death." And she keeps reminding him that he is responsible for everything that has happened. Then Sana looks his mother in the eyes and replies, "Do you truly feel I am responsible for my sister's death? How could you say that after all this time?" He feels that his mother is trying to frame him for what happened. However, Sana says, "I didn't do anything wrong, and I don't want to see you or your daughter ever again." Then he tells her to leave the city. As they leave, Juwon catches up with him, but is still thinking about what his mother said and how she continues to blame him for everything that happened all those years ago. Lost in thought, he is almost hit by a car, but Juwon manages to pull him out of the way just in time. She tells Sana to stop thinking about what his mother said and not to believe what she claims. Sana feels touched by Juwon's care, and then he goes to buy a cake that she loves, and they enjoy some beautiful time together, trying to forget about what happened. Later, Sana's mother arrives at Mr. Kim's workplace, requesting for them to have lunch together. We see that everything there is bustling, and she says, "I want to be here with my son so that we can meet." She also says that she wants to keep her son at her university in Seoul, but Mr. Kim is surprised by her behavior, asking, "How could you be so inconsiderate all these years?" He tells her to avoid Sana, but Sana's mother is shouting, "You were the reason for my daughter's death. How could you not be angry?" She insists that she should be grateful that she has returned to see Sana, but Mr. Kim gets angry and walks away, demanding that she stay away from his son. Meanwhile, Jun heads to the gym to ask Hyejun's father if he has the right to take Hyejun. That night, Mr. Kim comes out for a drink, and Jun approaches him to talk. Mr. Kim tells him everything that has happened and says he doesn't know what to do. Jun advises him to talk to Sana to see what she wants. Later, when they arrive home, Jun makes a drink for Sana since he is tired after staying up all night. Sana then tells him that his father had even come to see her. At that moment, Hyejun feels sadness, and Sana asks him to call her once more. Then he says, "Forget it. I'm tired of being annoyed." Hyejun rushes out and says, "Why are you upset?" Sana responds, "It's true that I have nothing to feel guilty about. My mother came to see me when she wanted her daughter to be united with my sister because she feels alone. She hasn't come for me. She has an agenda that resembles my father's selfish personality." At that moment, Hyejun becomes very upset whenever she mentions her father, and he starts to think that he is just like Hyejun's father, always selfish. Then Juwon arrives and says, "Hey, what's going on with all this fighting?" She suggests that they go out and buy some ice cream. However, Hyejun refuses and retreats to his room. Sana and Juwon step outside calmly and talk a bit. When they return home, Mr. Kim asks Sana's mother to call him once more. Sana says she should thank her father, but Juwon knocks on Hyejun's door and says, "If you take me the ice cream, I will buy what you like for a week." Hyejun reluctantly accepts the ice cream from her while saying, "I want to be alone." The next day at school, Sana encounters the shy boy who asks what Juwon said after their first meeting. The boy seems nervous, and Sana is worried there might be an issue. Afterward, as Sana heads toward Hyejun, and at that time, Hyejun with his friends eating hamburgers, and hears them say that his father brought food. Hyejun thinks of John but is shocked to realize a wealthy man provided it. Out of anger, he throws his hamburger away and yells, "Who gets food from him?" One of his friends asks, "You become rude when you got a wealthy father?" At that moment, Hyejun feels more frustrated and wants to lash out, but Sana arrives and says, "Stop this childish behavior. Focus on what is more important now." As they step away from the group, the shy boy approaches them and indicates he wants to talk. They gently ask him why Juwon left him. However, the boy refuses to answer. At that moment, Juwon appears and she sees they are grabbing the boy by the collar and begins to yell, and she is telling everything happened. And she said, "I am not angry about what he did to me," but Hyejun interrupts and says, "I don't want to hurt him. He was just about to fall and grabbed him not to fall, that is why I grabbed his collar, and we see that she has revealed everything, although the shy boy didn't tell anything. Sana comments that if she were angry about what happened, she should have spoken up earlier. Meanwhile, Hyejun tells the boy to leave alone Ju-won, stating that she doesn't deserve to be his girlfriend after what happened. Meanwhile, Sana's mother and daughter arrive at the restaurant to see Ju-won. However, when she spots Sana, she hesitates and doesn't approach them. Instead, Sana's mother urges her to call her brother, because when she calls, she immediately wants to talk to him. With that, Sana suddenly recognizes a girl who looks just like her deceased sister. Eventually, they meet at the restaurant, and Sana asks Ju-won to help her speak with the girl. During that, her mother grabs Sana's hand, begging her to come live with her. At that moment, Hyejun sees it and feels immense resentment. Sana furiously leaves away from his mother, then Hyejun comes up and says to him, "Go back to your mother, idiot," but Sana replied, "Talk to your mother when she comes back to you and leave me alone." Hyejun got angry and say, "Sure, my mother will be back." Sana says, "Wake up from the dream we are abandoned children and our mothers don't was us." The Hyejun slapped Sana while saying, "My mother loves and don't talk ever again." However, the people present hear that Sana's mother doesn't want him and she abandoned her son. At that time, Sana's mother was arguing with John as usual. She was blaming Sana for his sister's death, accusing him of being responsible. She said, "I have lived a hard life since my daughter's death, and it is your duty to ensure that Sana becomes a responsible son who listens to me. He must come with me to help raise his younger sister and atone for his sins." John became angry at her words and responded, "You're being unreasonable. It wasn't Sana's fault. He was just a child back then. You cannot hold him accountable for something beyond his control." While they were arguing, they heard a commotion. When they rushed out, they saw someone being slapped. It turned out that Sana was fighting with Hyejun. In front of everyone, Hyejun shouted, "We are children abandoned by our mothers. No one wanted us, and it's time we stop living in false hope." Sana's younger sister started crying upon witnessing the chaos. She ran to her mother and hugged her tightly. Sana's mother then yelled at John, saying, "Is this the kind of upbringing you've taught the children?" She accused him of neglecting the children and stormed off with her daughter. Later, everyone returned home. During dinner, the atmosphere was tense, with no one speaking to each other. Mr. Kim then asked Ju-won what had happened. Ju-won explained, "The woman you divorced is blaming my father for raising the children improperly." After the incident, Sana and Hyejun became enemies. Neither could stand to be in the other's presence, and both left the dinner table. The next day, Ju-won met her friend at school and shared what had happened. She said, "And that's not all. When I tried to mediate between them, they both wanted the same thing but refused to admit it. One of them even said, 'If he wants it, I don't. I'm afraid to even step between them.'" Later in class, Sana and Hyejun were still arguing. Then, a calm boy approached Ju-won with 2 tickets to a game arcade and asked her to join him. Ju-won initially refused, but changed her mind when she saw this as an opportunity to strengthen her friendships. She decided to invite her brothers and said, "If one of you doesn't come with me, I'll ask the other." In the end, both agreed to go with her. The following day, Sana and Hyejun arrived at the arcade. When they saw each other, they were surprised. Ju-won said, "There's no running away. You're going to spend time with me," she added. "We're waiting for my friend Park to join us." Meanwhile, we see Park being dropped off at the library by her mother, who appeared extremely anxious about her daughter's safety. After her mother left, Park took a bus to meet Ju-won. When Ju-won was about to start the game, she noticed that all their schoolmates were at the arcade. Word had spread that Ju-won had brought her brothers to the arcade, and since everyone admired Sana and Hyejun, they had come along with their friends to see the. When Park was late, Hyejun, Sana, and Ju-won decided to go together without waiting for the quiet boy. Ju-won refused to let him join them and brought the 2 brothers along to talk privately. However, Sana and Hyejun couldn't help but laugh at Ju-won's attempts to reconcile them. As she tried to get them to make peace, Sana and Hyejun ended up starting another fight, which angered Ju-won. After the game ended, Ju-won confronted them and shouted, "Leave! I'm waiting here for my friend Park." At that moment, Park arrived, but 4 boys known for bullying others surrounded her and began behaving rudely, trying to get to know her. A schoolmate who happened to be nearby saw what was happening but didn't know what to do. Juwon arrived and tried to defend her friend, but she was exhausted from earlier arguments with her brothers. Overwhelmed, she fainted. The 4 bullies panicked and scattered. Sana and Hyejun, who had been told about the situation by Juwon's friend, rushed to the scene to help. When they arrived, they found their sister unconscious. Seeing the 4 bullies nearby, Sana and Hyejun attacked them without saying a word. The fight escalated until the police arrived, taking all 8 of them into custody. Meanwhile, John was at home calculating the cost of next year's university tuition. He told Mr. Kim, "We need to save up for a car they can use for college, and we should cut back on food expenses." Mr. Kim suddenly received a call and rushed to the police station. At the station, Sana apologized to the boys, saying, "I thought you were harassing Juwon." At that moment, Sana's father arrived, and it was revealed that he was a police officer. The bullies, upon learning this and being scolded by Mr. Kim, felt guilty. The matter was resolved, and everyone was forgiven. Later, they all rode home together. When Park's mother saw her getting out of the car, she began yelling, "You are my only hope! How can you lie to me and run off with your friends?" Park tried to explain that Juwon was Sana's sister and the most respected student in school. She lied to avoid further conflict with her mother. The next day, the story of what happened at the arcade spread throughout the school, with rumors claiming that Hyejun had a crush on Park. Juwon told Park, "This is the perfect chance to confess your feelings." But another girl who liked Hyejun asked him directly if he had feelings for anyone. Hyejun replied, "I don't have feelings for anyone." Park overheard this and realized he wasn't thinking about her. Hurt, she walked away, pretending to be unbothered even though she was deeply upset. The other girl used this opportunity to get closer to Hyejun, achieving her goal. Juwon tried to talk to Park, but Park brushed it off, saying, "It's nothing. I'm fine," though she felt heartbroken inside. Later after school, Sana took Juwon to buy a birthday gift for Hyejun. They chose a pair of sports shoes. The saleswoman assumed they were a couple and gave them a special discount. After leaving the mall, they stopped for ice cream. On their way out, they saw Sana's mother with his younger sister at a nearby restaurant. Sana's mother left to use the restroom and instructed her daughter to stay put. However, when she saw Sana, she ran after him, yelling. In her haste, she tripped on the stairs. Sana rushed to catch her and said, "Be careful!" His mother, as usual, began scolding him. Juwon arrived and defended Sana, saying, "If you had truly cared for your daughter the way you claim, she wouldn't have fallen on the stairs. Leave him alone." She walked away with Sana, who looked at her with admiration, feeling as though she was his savior. The next day, the bond between Sana and Hyejun returned to how it had been before, even stronger. They began preparing for Hyejun's birthday, which was also the day their aunt was expected to visit. During the celebration, Hyejun's aunt pulled him aside and reminded him of the money she had borrowed from John. She said, "You must work to repay this debt. Don't forget how much John has done for you and help clean the house while you're at it." Unfortunately, John overheard the conversation and felt hurt, but chose not to say anything. Later, during dinner, he finally spoke up, saying, "I don't expect anything from Hyejun. He is like my own son, and nothing he does will ever repay the love I have for him. I don't want money or repayment." He then asked the aunt to never bring it up again, causing Hyejun to break down in tears. Sana also confronted the aunt, saying, "As long as you're in this house, we are all equal, and no one owes anyone anything." Hyejun, overhearing this, felt immense gratitude towards Sana. He then escorted his aunt home, where she apologized, saying, "I didn't mean anything by it. I'm just used to speaking this way." The next day, while John was at a cafe, Hyejun's mother, Mrs. Kang, unexpectedly showed up. She rudely handed him a bundle of cash, saying it was repayment for her debt. John told her to wait, as Hyejun would arrive shortly, but she refused, saying, "I don't want to see him or have him see me. I came only to repay my debt." As she left, John ran after her, returning the money and saying, "I don't want anything from you. Your son just wants to see you. He lives with the hope that you'll come back someday." Mrs. Kang coldly replied, "I don't want to see him. Nothing will change if I do. It's better this way," before driving off. Meanwhile, Juwon and Hyejun were on their way to the cafe and spotted Mrs. Kang getting into her car. Hyejun recognized her but said nothing. Later, they joined Sana on the rooftop of their house. At that moment, Sana's mother calls him, and when he answers, he is startled to learn that his sister has left the house, leaving behind a note that says, "My dear brother, I'm going to Sana." At that time, no one knows where she has gone, and Sana becomes very worried. Everyone sets out to search for her everywhere. His sister ends up at a bus stop near a diner. A kind woman at the location notices that the girl looks lost and calls the authorities. Unexpectedly, Mr. Kim arrives, but he doesn't recognize her since they have never met before. However, when Sana calls Mr. Kim and explains what happened while describing his sister, Mr. Kim realizes who the girl is and reassures Sana, saying, "Don't worry, she's with me." Mr. Kim brings her to John's diner, where everyone gathers. Sana feels a great sense of relief when he sees her, as he was deeply worried something bad might have happened. Shortly after, Sana's mother arrives at the diner and begins yelling at Sana. She accuses him, saying, "You caused the death of my first daughter, and now you want to be the reason my second one goes missing? You must come live with me so I can keep an eye on you." She continues to berate him, calling him shameless. When Sana tries to respond, saying, "I didn't do anything wrong. You always blame me for everything," she refuses to listen and keeps shouting. Even Ju-won and Hye-jun, who tried to greet her, are ignored entirely. Later, Mr. Kim takes Sana outside and Sana begins to cry. Mr. Kim tells him, "You always see yourself as the victim, Lee, but you don't see how hard life has been for Sana because of you." Sana's mother starts yelling again, insisting that I am the one who has been wronged. This causes Sana to fall into a deep depression. For a long time, he refuses to eat or drink anything at home. Ju-won is the only one caring for him, bringing food to his desk and ensuring he attends school. Days later, as Sana gets off a bus, he sees Hye-jun waiting for him. Sana tries to apologize, saying, "I didn't know your mother was like that." They reconcile and return home together, sharing a meal. Meanwhile, John begins reflecting on what Hye-jun's mother said, unsure how to respond. At the same time, Sana stays late at school one day. When he leaves, it's raining heavily, and he has no umbrella. He decides to stop by a store to buy one, but sees Ju-won waiting for him by the door, soaked from the rain. She hands him an umbrella, and Sana realizes from her drenched clothes and shoes that she has been standing in the rain for a long time. When Hye-jun mentions that Ju-won has been searching for him for over an hour, Sana feels guilty. Seeing how much everyone cares for him, he resolves to stop listening to his mother's hurtful words. The next day, Mr. Kim takes Sana to his sister's grave and tells him, "You are not to blame for what happened. It was your mother and I who were responsible because we left you as children." This helps Sana recover, and he returns to his normal self. Later, Hye-jun receives a message that his aunt has given birth to a beautiful baby. He says he will visit after school. Ju-won, on the other hand, invites them both to lunch at Park's house. Hye-jun agrees, but Sana refuses. Ju-won convinces him, saying, "You're the one being invited so you can teach my daughter." At the meal, Park's mother displays a strong personality, criticizing Park for her lack of focus and inability to grasp concepts even with special lessons. She comments, "I hope she gains at least half the intelligence needed to enter law school." The three friends notice Park's discomfort and shy behavior, especially when her mother leaves the room to wash her hands. Park follows her and pleads, "Please don't call me a fool in front of my friends." She begins crying, but her mother coldly replies, "I said that so Sana would feel pity for you and help you." Later, the friends take Park to the beach to cheer her up. Sana sits with her and says, "All mothers make mistakes, but someone like you, with your personality, is irreplaceable. Even though you didn't stand up to your mother, that doesn't make you weak." He gives her a math book and they laugh together. Seeing this, Hye-jun comments, "I think Sana likes Park more than me." Hye-jun then receives a call from his aunt asking him to visit the hospital. When he arrives and sees the baby, he is overjoyed. However, a nurse mistakenly says the baby looks like his mother. This comment leads Hye-jun to realize his mother had been at the hospital earlier, talking to his aunt. He leaves immediately and heads to John's diner, recalling how his aunt once told him his mother had settled her debts and started a new life. Hye-jun becomes emotional, regretting the years he spent hoping his mother would return. He breaks down in tears, realizing she no longer wants to see him. At the same time, Sana and Ju-won are walking together when Ju-won accidentally trips and bumps into Sana. They both laugh awkwardly but quickly move on to catch the bus. When they arrive, they see Hye-jun sitting on the ground. Concerned, they sit beside him and ask what happened. Hye-jun initially tries to hide his feelings, but they can tell something is wrong. He finally shares everything, and they comfort him, saying, "If she doesn't want to return, she's not worth your pain." When they return home, Hyejun finds John washing his clothes. He approaches him and says, "I met my aunt today. I found out that the money she left behind was enough to cover 1 year of my college fees. After that, I plan to work and repay you for all the money you spent on me." However, John got upset when he said this and replied, "I don't consider it a debt. I couldn't even refuse the money from her mother." He then asked him to take a break and stop overthinking everything. Later, Hyejun came out to sleep, but it was clear he was deeply troubled. He spent the entire night crying. The next day, when he arrived at school, he saw his father waiting outside for him. His father tried to persuade him to go on a trip, but Hyejun refused and told him to stay away. After that, Hyejun left and went to play a game. During the game, 2 senior coaches were present, scouting for skilled players to join the national team. Hyejun was an excellent player, and they were impressed by his talent. When the game ended, they informed him that the Seoul team and his team would face each other after the exams, encouraging him to attend. Meanwhile, Juwon, noticing that Sana was avoiding her, grew frustrated. Whenever Sana saw her, he avoided her because he felt she liked him, and this made him uncomfortable. Juwon, upset, confided in Hyejun, who assumed that Sana was stressed about the upcoming finals in 10 days. To ease Sana's worries, Juwon gathered some money to buy him a gift. On the day of the finals, Juwon helped her father prepare breakfast for Sana and Hyejun and saw them off. During the exam, Sana performed well and managed to complete everything. However, Hyejun struggled and relied on luck to get through. When they finished, Sana asked Hyejun how he found the exam. Hyejun admitted he guessed most answers, but pointed out that their tests were different, as his focused on math problems. After returning home, they found that Juwon and Park had prepared a small barbecue party for them on the rooftop. They cooked together, but when Juwon accidentally hurt her hand, Sana grew worried and immediately took her to treat the injury. Sana's concern made him feel anxious. When they sat together, he suggested they go outside for some fresh air. Meanwhile, Hyejun opened up to Park about his mother, saying he wasn't upset anymore and had finally accepted that she wouldn't return. Park, upset by this, started crying. Hyejun comforted her, saying, "I know you like Sana, and I'll help you get closer to him because you're a good person." Park, frustrated, wanted to deny her feelings for Sana, but couldn't bring herself to say anything. Later, Hyejun asked Sana to take Park home, which annoyed Juwon. On the way, Sana told Park he knew about her feelings for Hyejun. He advised her not to pursue him, calling him a fool, and added that it was obvious she liked Hyejun. Park responded that even if she confessed, it wouldn't change anything, and she didn't want to lose their friendship. When they returned, Sana's mother called and scolded him for not returning her calls. When he tried to explain, she hung up angrily. The next day at school, both Sana and Hyejun were asked by their teachers to get their parents' signatures on permission slips for Seoul University, a school that promised them bright futures. However, both refused the offer, preferring to stay at a nearby college to avoid leaving John. On the day of the big basketball game, Hyejun told his team to relax and not worry about the match. His teammates warned him that a boy from their elementary school, known for being arrogant despite being bad at both sports and studies, was on the opposing team. Hyejun prepared himself to avoid any trouble. When the game started, the boy mocked Hyejun, calling him poor and claiming he sold him used shoes online. Hyejun ignored him and told his team to focus on the game. Despite the challenges, Hyejun's team won in the last 10 minutes, impressing everyone, including his father, who watched quietly before leaving. Sana followed him and asked why he came. His father dismissed him, saying it was none of his business. Hyejun's father returned to John and started yelling, saying, "If you were a good person, you'd let Hyejun join a professional basketball team instead of holding him back here. You can't even afford Seoul University's fees, and you're making him suffer." Mr. Kim, overhearing the argument, slapped Hyejun's father and said, "You've been absent from your son's life for 19 years. John has raised him for 10 years, providing food, education, and everything else. How dare you criticize him?" Hyejun saw the fight, intervened, and demanded to know why his father had come. His father tried to convince him to move to America, but Hyejun refused. Furious, his father threatened to destroy John's restaurant with one phone call. Hyejun warned him that if he tried, he would be the first to stand in his way. Afraid of putting John in danger, Hyejun let the matter drop. Later, while sitting with his sister, Sana received a call informing him that his mother had been in a car accident while heading to the airport. Her husband had died, and she was in critical condition. Sana and his father rushed to the hospital, where they met his uncle, who explained that his niece had been left with his wife, and he didn't know how to tell her that her father had died. When the little girl arrived, she was happy but quickly sensed something was wrong. When told she couldn't see her parents, she broke down crying and clung to Sana. Sana assured her that he would stay with her. His father and uncle agreed, and they all waited outside the ICU for updates. Sana stayed by his sister's side, comforting her, even though she was unaware her father had passed away. At that time, Juwon was trying to convince her family to visit Sana in the hospital because he wasn't eating properly. However, they refused, and so she told them that she would spend the whole day with her friend Park instead. The next day, Juwon left home early, took a train, and arrived in Seoul. She began searching until she found the hospital where Sana's mother was staying. When she was about to call Sana, she saw his sister hugging him and heard her telling him that their mother had regained consciousness. Sana, overjoyed, rushed to see her. At that moment, Juwon recalled Sana's mother's hurtful words, "Sana and my daughter are one family, but you are not part of us." Juwon deeply felt that she didn't belong to their family. Meanwhile, Hye-jun, who was at the park, learned that Juwon had gone to Seoul and waited for her at the train station. When she arrived, he confronted her angrily, but noticed her sadness. She explained what had happened and her inability to speak with Sana. Feeling overwhelmed, she returned home. On the other side, Sana's mother fell from her bed after regaining consciousness and began screaming and banging her legs on the floor. Sana, frightened, rushed to help her back onto the bed. However, his mother started cursing her misfortune and said, "When I remarried that man, I thought my life would improve." She blamed everything on her son, saying, "No one understands me. I'm the only one suffering." She began pulling his legs, and Sana said, "You should thank God because out of everyone who was in that accident, only you survived. Your husband died." His mother replied, "I wish I had died with them," and yelled at him. Sana regretted staying by her side, but remained until the nurse administered sedatives to calm her down. He left the hospital feeling angry and sat with his uncle. His uncle suggested it would be better for Sana to study in Seoul and live with his younger sister, as their mother's condition was worsening and she needed family support. Feeling guilty, Sana wished to support his mother but was conflicted. He tried calling Juwon, but she had fallen asleep and her phone was off. The next day, Juwon woke up cheerful because it was the day Sana was expected to return. She left with Hye-jun, and when they arrived at a restaurant, they saw her father collapsed on the floor. Both Juwon and Hye-jun were shocked and rushed him to the hospital. The doctor informed them that he collapsed from exhaustion as he had been working at the restaurant all night. He asked Juwon to continue her studies and told Hye-jun to return home. Hye-jun left to buy medicine, and during that time Mr. Kim approached John and asked why he was overworking himself. John replied, "I'm doing all this to save money so Hye-jun can attend a good university abroad or pursue his passion for sports." Mr. Kim told him, "No matter what you do, you won't be able to save that much money." Hye-jun overheard their conversation and felt heartbroken. He told his friend about the situation, and his friend suggested, "If that's the case, you should use your biological father's money to travel and study. Then, once you're successful, you can return and repay John for everything he's done for you." Hye-jun agreed and later helped John at the restaurant until their shift ended. That evening, Hye-jun told John he would go to America with his biological father to study, but promised to return after completing his education to repay him. He also mentioned overhearing Mr. Kim's conversation with John. Without waiting for John's response, Hye-jun left and went home, where he cried. John, too, was overwhelmed with sadness, realizing he couldn't provide for Hye-jun and felt forced to let him go. The next day, as Sana was set to return, John prepared food while Hye-jun helped him. John asked Juwon not to tell Sana about his hospital visit to avoid worrying him. However, as soon as Sana arrived and hugged Juwon, she told him about their father's hospital stay. Sana rushed to greet his father, while Hye-jun prepared a barbecue for Sana so they could talk upstairs. During their conversation, Hye-jun told Sana about his plans to go to America with his father. Sana, in turn, revealed he planned to leave and live with his mother. He told Hye-jun, "You should stay with John because he raised you. He took care of you, and now isn't the time for both of us to leave at once." Hye-jun became angry and responded, "My staying here will only be an additional burden to John." They argued, and Juwon overheard their conversation. Shocked, she asked if both of them planned to leave. Neither of them could respond. At that moment, John arrived and although he knew about Hyejun's plans, didn't get upset even after learning about Sana's departure. Instead, he asked them to come downstairs and eat together. However, Ju-won, upset, refused to eat and locked herself in her room. That night, Mr. Kim returned and told Sana he initially opposed him living with his mother, but after discovering she had attempted suicide twice the previous week, he became concerned about her condition and agreed. The next morning, the family gathered for breakfast, but Ju-won silently left without speaking to anyone. When Sana tried to follow her, his father stopped him. The rest continued breakfast, with Sana and Hyejun sitting together, knowing they might not see each other for a while. At school, Ju-won's friends noticed she was upset and learned her brothers were leaving. She said, "For the first time in my life, I've realized that Sana and Hyejun aren't truly my brothers. I was the only one who thought they were family, and left school entirely." Meanwhile, Sana encountered the girl Hyejun liked. She told him, "I'm glad you're going to Seoul University. Maybe while we're studying, we can start a relationship." Sana didn't reply and walked away. Later, when Sana and Hyejun looked for Ju-won, they found out she had left school. Sana rushed to find her. Meanwhile, Hyejun met Park and gave her the food meant for Ju-won, asking her to give it to her when she saw her. Park, confused, didn't know how to confess her feelings to Hyejun. But when a ball almost hit her, Hyejun caught it, and they spent some time together. She asked, "Why haven't you confessed your feelings to Sana?" Annoyed by his cluelessness, Park got upset. As he was leaving, she asked, "Am I someone who can't be loved?" Hyejun replied, "You're a beautiful, kind, and honest girl. Sana is lucky to have you love him." When Hyejun said goodbye, Park was left in tears, overwhelmed by her love for him and his obliviousness. On the other hand, Sana is searching for Ju-won everywhere. Eventually, he finds her at a dessert cafe. Sana tries to joke with her to ease the tension and says, "I talk to you every day and won't stop." At that moment, Ju-won starts crying and asks him to stay with her, but Sana replies, "I can't." When she arrives home, she finds Hyejun waiting for her with all the money he has saved, bringing her favorite desserts in an attempt to make amends. Ju-won, still emotional, takes his belongings and leaves, seemingly to make things harder for herself. The next day is the day they are supposed to travel. Ju-won struggles to hold back tears to avoid showing sadness. As they all bid farewell, Ju-won refuses to say goodbye. After they leave, she eats her food while quietly crying. Time passes, and Ju-won's 17th birthday arrives, but no one is able to attend, so they celebrate via a video call. On her next birthday, the same thing happens, with their only interactions being through video calls. Over the years, their conversations become less frequent, and eventually, Hyejun stops speaking to Ju-won altogether. 10 years pass without contact. Ju-won opens a dessert cafe, and during this time, her father calls to remind her that it's her 27th birthday weekend. However, she dismisses it, saying, "It's not important. Celebrate it another time if you want. I'm busy." She leaves the shop to run errands and calls her friend Park, who is now a police officer. She warns Park to be careful because a man has been hanging around her store. While running errands, the man manages to enter her shop because Ju-won didn't lock it properly. When Ju-won returns, she discovers someone has broken in. She shouts, "There's no money in the shop." The man tries to flee, but Ju-won catches him and beats him. He covers his face and doesn't fight back. When the police take him into custody, they try to uncover his identity but struggle. John and Mr. Kim arrive, and when they remove the man's disguise, they realize it's Hyejun. John hugs him tightly. Just as they think the situation is resolved, Ju-won coldly states, "I don't even know Hyejun." Later, Sana arrives at the store and sees the broken glass everywhere. Concerned, he rushes to the police station. When Ju-won sees that even Sana came, she decides to drop her complaint against Hyejun. Hyejun tries to apologize to Ju-won, explaining that he hasn't contacted her in years because he joined the military in Korea for 2 years and quit basketball because life became too difficult. They leave together for dinner, and Sana reveals that he has become a doctor and is now working at a hospital. However, Ju-won cannot accept them re-entering her life and returns to her shop. She confides in Park, telling her everything that happened. Park insists on seeing what Hyejun has become. That evening, Ju-won refuses to have dinner with Hyejun and Sana and leaves. They follow her, and Ju-won says, "I don't want you in my life anymore." Sana responds, "I miss you," but Ju-won ignores him and walks away. At home, we see that Juwon and Park live together. Juwon declares that she won't let them back into her life and refuses to return to her family's house. At the same time, she discovers that Hyejun and Sana have moved in as her neighbors. Sana later visits Hyejun at his workplace and tells him, "Come to the shop." When he arrives, she hands him a visa and comments, "I don't like those plastic shoes you wear. Get new boots." At the hospital, Hyejun notices the woman he had been interested in working there, but he doesn't respond to her questions. Meanwhile, the shy boy who has always liked Juwon is still trying to get closer to her by working at the hospital to stay near Sana. Juwon, on the other hand, is struggling to focus since their return. On her birthday morning before leaving for work, they surprise her with a cake. Juwon asks Hyejun how long he was in the military, but he doesn't answer. Sana reveals that Hyejun sustained severe leg injuries and became paralyzed. He endured years of surgeries and physical therapy, but ultimately regained the ability to walk. Hearing this, Jong breaks down and blames himself, retreating to the kitchen in tears. None of them can handle the emotional weight of the revelation, and they step out. Sana tries to explain to Juwon how hard it was for Hyejun to return after everything he had been through. He recalls how his mother used to cry every year, begging him not to leave, but this year, he insisted on coming back. Meanwhile, Jong, at the cafe, discusses opening a bigger restaurant with a friend so he can work with Hyejun. However, he doesn't have enough money. Hyejun meets a wealthy man and considers buying a larger cafe in the city for Jong. It turns out Hyejun has saved a lot of money over the years. That evening, Juwon prepares for her party. Park arrives first, followed by their old school friend and her husband. Unexpectedly, Jun arrives, wanting to see Hyejun. The shy boy also shows up to see Juwon. They wait for Sana and Hyejun, who arrive later. Hyejun gives Juwon a gift, and we see Park showing interest in Jun. Sana, however, is at the hospital and cannot attend. Later, Jong and Mr. Kim reveal the money they've been saving for years to support Hyejun and want to help him now. The next morning, as Juwon steps out of her house, she finds a beautifully wrapped gift, a pair of earphones, left at her door. Park tells her to wear them that night. Sana later messages her, thanking her for appreciating his gift and asking to meet, but Juwon declines, saying she's busy. The shy doctor later questions Juwon about her relationship with Sana, and she denies any involvement. That evening, Juwon accidentally leaves her phone at the shop. Sana calls her, and when she returns to retrieve it, she finds Sana waiting. He confesses his love, saying, "It took me 10 years to say this." Juwon pretends not to understand and responds, "Everyone loves me, whether it's my father, Mr. Kim, or Hyejun." At the same time, Sana says, "I know you understand," and Juwon leaves. She decides to abandon the appointment she was headed to and returns home with a bottle of cold water, reflecting on what Sana had said. Her friend senses something is wrong. When she asks Juwon why she's home at this hour, Juwon is unable to respond and retreats to her room. Meanwhile, Sana is happy because he has finally managed to confess his feelings. The next morning, Juwon and Park leave early to meet Sana. When they step out, they see Sana standing ahead of them, looking distressed. She runs home and asks Park to leave. Park realizes something has happened when Sana asks if anything occurred the previous night when she returned. Park understands and remarks, "You finally confessed your feelings, didn't you?" Sana smiles but does not reply. Elsewhere, Juwon is puzzled by Sana's mood. Hyejun meets Juwon and invites her to have a meal together, sharing his favorite food. This reminds Juwon of her childhood, and she feels overwhelmed. On the other side, Mr. Kim and Jong discuss their children's future, expressing concern about Hyejun since he's the only one whose intentions remain unclear. Later, Juwon goes to the market but finds herself thinking of Sana all day. She checks her phone to see if Sana has called, while Sana contemplates calling her. Meanwhile, Hyejun visits Jong at a cafe, where an elderly woman tells Jong that Juwon should get married. She shares a story about a grieving girl who found solace in a supportive husband, suggesting Juwon needs someone to rely on. Hyejun overhears this conversation. Later, a seller calls Hyejun, informing him that to complete a transaction, a family connection must be proven. However, Hyejun lacks any official documents to confirm their kinship. Around this time, Sana emerges from the surgery room, exhausted. He calls Juwon just to hear her voice and invites her to dinner with her father. Juwon declines, saying she'll go alone. Juwon prepares herself but remains unsure how to act around San, so she decided to Sana my older brother to distract him and trying to show she values their bond. Simultaneously, Hyejun announces a decision, boldly proposing to Juwon in front of others. People laugh, thinking it's a joke, but Hyejun explains that he wants to establish a familial tie between himself, John, and Juwon to ensure someone is responsible if anything happens. Juwon dismisses him, saying, "It's easier for my father to adopt you as his son than for me to marry you." Later, Juwon runs into Sana, who follows her and warns her not to let Hyejun's words upset her. Juwon replies, "I'm not upset." Sana recalls how, as a child, Juwon used to say, "When I grow up, I'll marry Sana," but now she views him as a brother. Sana takes Juwon's hand, trying to convey her feelings, but Juwon pulls away. Elsewhere, John tells Hyejun, "You and Sana are like my children, even without a paper proving it." Later, Hyejun and Sana walk together, during which Sana scolds him for his unusual thoughts, calling them unrealistic. Hyejun replies, "It's not an ordinary human thought." Meanwhile, Juwon visits her father to bid farewell before leaving. She overhears Mr. Kim talking to his ex-wife, who had asked Sana to stay for a month. Sana's mother said, "Sana told me I'll stay with my father for 1 month and then come back." However, Sana's mother gets upset and angrily calls Mr. Kim, telling him, "After 1 month, I plan to return to the hospital," and she requests him not to pressure her son, saying, "Sana belongs with me." Then, she ends the call abruptly. Afterward, everyone is shocked because Sana had told them, "I will live here with you forever." But now it's clear he lied. He had only told his mother, "I'll be gone for a month." However, John is suspicious that something is not right. He hands a drink to Juwon, knowing that Sana loves it, and it even makes him sleepy after drinking it. Juwon strongly believes that Sana's mother is behind his troubles because ever since he returned, he hasn't been acting normal. The next day, before Sana leaves, he knocks on Juwon's door, and she opens it, having just woken up. She hands him the drink that was given to her and asks him not to overwork himself. Sana then says, "My situation won't be okay until you respond to what I told you." At that moment, Juwon heads to her shop, where Hyejun is with a friend. Hyejun tells his friend that he plans to marry Juwon so that he can create a family connection with her father. His friend asks if he loves Juwon romantically, but Hyejun doesn't fully understand what that kind of love means. Later, Juwon arrives and scolds Hyejun for thinking that way. Hyejun apologizes, and the two sit down together. After everyone leaves the shop, they clean up. Juwon tells him, "Your father loves you and would never abandon you. Your room and clothes are still as they were because he always cleaned them whenever he missed you. He was happiest when you returned." Hyejun feels a sense of calm. Meanwhile, Sana meets with his father, Mr. Kim, and John. His father shouts at him, asking, "What is this I'm hearing from your mother?" Sana explains, "I told her I'd stay here, but she wants to pressure me into going back. But I don't want to go back." His father angrily replies, "I've endured pressure for 10 years without saying anything." Sana storms off without responding, and John follows him, saying, "Don't just think about yourself." At that moment, Sana realizes that John seems unwell. He asks John to meet him at the hospital for a checkup. The next day, Juwon and her father arrive at the hospital for John's test. Sana brings Juwon to treat her injured hand. John arrives, observing Sana closely to gauge her feelings for Juwon. John too suspects they might be in love, while Juwon feels jealous but tries to hide it. The following day, Hyejun meets his aunt, who has started working at a travel agency. They enjoy a lovely meal and spend quality time together. His aunt is delighted to reunite with him after years and asks if his mother has contacted him. Hyejun replies, "No." Afterward, when Hyejun steps outside, he notices a woman who resembles his mother and follows her, but the woman crosses the road and he cannot catch up with her. Later, Park sees him calling out to the woman as mom, but she tells him she won't reveal his secret unless he agrees to do something for her. They sit down together and she explains that her mother arranged a marriage for her with a man she doesn't love. She asks Hyejun to pretend to be her boyfriend so the man will leave. Hyejun agrees. Meanwhile, the woman Hyejun saw, who he believes is his mother, accidentally bumps into John. John catches her and they end up at the same place. Mrs. Kang, Hyejun's mother, tells John that she has returned to Seoul and opened a shop nearby. John becomes excited and wants to call Hye-jun so he can meet her, but she refuses, saying she cannot face him yet. She wants to leave quickly, but John stops her, saying that abandoning her son is unforgivable. She then reveals a secret she has kept for 20 years. She killed a man and had to run away. She doesn't disclose who the man was or why she killed him. That night, Sana and Juwon have dinner together. Sana confesses his love for her again, but Juwon tells him she sees him as a brother and that nothing can happen between them. Sana runs after her and hugs her. At that moment, Juwon admits she also loves him but doesn't know how to tell her father. Sana reassures her, saying he will handle it since she has already agreed. The next day, Park meets the man her mother wants her to marry. He is an arrogant man with a smug demeanor. The first thing he asks her is how much she earns. Park dislikes him and the entire situation. While this is happening, Hye-jun walks in, looking confident and handsome, and asks Park why she left him for this man. He confesses his love for her, and she admits she loves him too. She leaves the other man, looking elated that she had the courage to end things. Hye-jun jokes that she did a great job acting, but she remains silent because her feelings are real. As they walk together, they meet a property dealer who tells Hye-jun that the building he wants will cost $800,000. Park is shocked by the price, but Hye-jun explains that he has been saving money to repay John for his kindness. He shares how everyone around him asks for favors, but Park tells him that whenever she wins a case, people give her apples even though she doesn't like them. No one ever asks what she truly likes. Hye-jun understands her point and promises to make her happy. Meanwhile, John is calculating the rent and costs when his grandmother mentions an expense of $100,000. John resolves to manage it for Hye-jun's sake. When Hye-jun visits John, he offers him money he has saved. John becomes angry and asks why he thinks he owes him anything. John yells at him for doing this and asks him to leave the house for the first time. Hurt, Hye-jun leaves and meets Park, who tries to comfort him, but he insists he needs time to calm down. He thanks her for always supporting him. On the other hand, Sana's mother decides to take action and prepare a surprise for her son with his sister, who initially refuses to go, wanting her brother to live his own life. However, her mother insists. Meanwhile, Sana is happy living in the excitement of his relationship with Juwon. He visits her early in the morning to eat together, and Juwon is happy too. But when her work colleagues show up, they act as if nothing is going on between them. A friend of Sana's teases him about their obvious connection, and he is thrilled. Later, Juwon calls Sana and asks him not to tell anyone about their relationship until they inform their families, as she fears they might get upset. Sana agrees and plans to speak with her family at the end of the week. Sana sends a message to his father and John, asking for a meeting. When John speaks with Mr. Kim, John expresses his frustration about Hye-jun, accusing him of doing everything for himself without considering others. Mr. Kim's friend mentions Hye-jun's past work in the fashion industry in America and shows them photos of his achievements. The photos are impressive, and Mr. Kim shares them in the family group chat, expressing pride in Hye-jun. Sana and Juwon are happy to see their brother's success. When Hye-jun sees the photos, he is shocked and visits a restaurant where some of his photos are displayed. He apologizes to John, who is now proud of him, and they sit together. Juwon and Park take pictures together, but Park receives a call from her mother, who angrily scolds her for rejecting the arranged marriage. Hye-jun overhears the conversation and invites her to join him for a meal. When she sees Juwon being fed by her father, she gets upset because she doesn't see Juwon as a father figure. Meanwhile, Hye-jun's aunt sends him a message with the address of his mother's salon, suggesting he visit her if he feels ready. Hye-jun decides to go and sees his mother laughing and happy, but cannot bring himself to speak with her. That day, Sana and Juwon go out together for their first planned outing. As they leave the house, they see Hye-jun sitting alone, looking upset. They ask him, "What happened?" He tells them that he saw his mother. They respond, "Come on, we'll go with you and ask her why she acted like that." However, Hye-jun refuses and says, "I just want to be alone." He then goes back into the house to rest, but Sana and Juwon don't let the matter go. They get his aunt's address and decide to visit her. They are surprised to see John there, and they all sit down to discuss why she has avoided meeting Hye-jun. Meanwhile, Sana's mother and sister arrive at Sana's house but find only Hyejun there. Feeling shy, Hyejun texts Sana, who is still with his mother. Sana and Juwon learn about Mrs. Kong's remorse and how she wants to apologize to Hyejun. This contrasts sharply with Sana's mother, who is controlling and refuses to listen to her children's wishes. Mrs. Kang reveals that she had been imprisoned for being accused of murder. She says, "I didn't want Hyejun to find out about the situation I'm in." At that moment, Juwon kneels before her and expresses how much she loves Hyejun and wants him to meet his mother. She pleads with Mrs. Kang to prepare herself to meet her son, saying, "He needs you." Meanwhile, Sana's mother is at the house, complaining that Sana's room is the smallest in the house. She asks her daughter to gather Sana's belongings, but Hyejun responds, "As long as Sana is here, he won't be leaving again." Sana's mother becomes angry and shouts at Hyejun, demanding that he stay out of matters that don't concern him. Hyejun replies, "If it concerns Sana, then it's my business because he's my brother," and he storms off. At that moment, Juwon and Sana return home. Hyejun tells Sana, "Your mother is waiting for you in your room." Sana goes in alone, and his mother asks him to come with her. When he refuses, she starts blaming him for everything that has happened, including the accident and her current situation. Enraged, she even accuses him of being the cause of her misery. Sana, frustrated, asks, "If you're so upset about my sister's death and care about my children as you claim, then why are you acting like this?" His mother, in anger, slaps him. Sana leaves the room, visibly distressed, and doesn't return home. Instead, he heads straight to the hospital. The next morning, Hyejun and Juwon have breakfast together, discussing how they can help Sana because they don't want him to leave. During the meal, Hyejun asks Juwon, "What happened to Park? She didn't show up last night." Juwon explains that she spent the night at her mother's house. She then asks, "Why do you care about Park?" Hyejun tries to act indifferent, pretending it doesn't matter to him. Later, Hyejun leaves to pick up clothes for Sana because Juwon plans to visit him at the hospital. When Hyejun arrives, he is shocked to find Sana taking antidepressants. However, he doesn't tell anyone and instead goes to John's cafe. There, he asks John to prepare a drink that helps with sleep for Sana, explaining that Sana hasn't been sleeping well recently. Meanwhile, Juwon calls Sana and says, "I'm waiting for you outside the hospital." Despite his condition, Sana comes out to meet her. As they show affection for each other, John sees them and realizes they're in love. Sana and Juwon spend the day together, but it's evident that Sana is deeply troubled, to the point where he can hardly speak. Juwon speaks to him gently and asks if his mother had asked him to go with her. Sana responds, "Yes, but I've decided not to go. I'll stay here and won't leave you again." Later, Hyejun visits Park at her home, bringing her food. He asks if her mother yelled at her because she canceled her engagement with the man her mother had chosen. Park admits, "Yes, but I don't care because she'll probably find another man for me soon." It's clear that Hyejun is jealous, and he says, "If you need me to ruin another engagement, I'll be ready." Park thanks him, and he leaves. That night, when Hyejun returns to the hospital, he sees his sister. She tells him, "Last night, Mom broke down crying when we got back to the hotel." At that moment, Sana feels guilty for not expressing his emotions. He notices his mother waiting outside and asks him to come with her. Sana changes his clothes and agrees to go with her. As they are heading to the house, they encounter Juwon, who is waiting for him. Sana's mother becomes angry and says, "I have the right to spend time with my son." She tries to speak harshly, but Juwon grabs Sana's hand and says, "He's not a child anymore, and he won't go with you again." She reminds his mother of the time she abandoned him when he was just 9 years old, saying, "Take him, I don't want him," and adds, "For the past 10 years, you've only been his mother in name, but from now on, he's not leaving me." She then walks away with Sana. When Sana arrives home, he finds Hyejun sitting in his room, crying in front of the antidepressants. Sana asks him, "Why didn't you tell me? Why are you doing this to yourself?" Hyejun replies, "The hatred we share for our mothers stems from the love we both have for them, and we can't accept how easily they left us." For the first time, Sana breaks down in tears and admits that he can't accept his mother abandoning him. They cry together until they both fall asleep. The next morning, Juwon wakes Sana up because they have been invited to lunch at John's house. The three of them gather there, and for the first time, Sana speaks up. revealing that he spent 10 years with his mother, enduring many hardships. Everyone tries to comfort him and lighten the mood by making jokes and laughing. That evening, as they're leaving, Juwon tells Sana that she plans to meet her friends later that night and warns him not to stay out too late. Meanwhile, Hyejun meets with a couple who are his friends. He is surprised by their close relationship as he's single, and it reminds him of the moment when Juwon embraced Sana. He wishes it was a lie. Later, as Sana and Juwon return late, Hyejun heads out to the store to buy drinks for the house. At that moment, he sees Sana and Juwon in a romantic moment. Despite Juwon trying to explain that she didn't want to hide anything, Hyejun struggles to believe that their relationship is real. When Juwon confesses that they love each other, Hyejun asks, "Why did you reject me and choose Sana, even though I was the first to propose marriage to you?" He storms out. Sana follows him to calm him down and explains that their relationship began a long time ago. Hyejun says, "You're going to get married and become one family, but I'll be forgotten because I'm not part of this family. The biggest problem we face is forgetting each other." Sana responds, "If you think we'll forget you, then just leave." Hyejun angrily walks away. The next day, Hyejun goes for a run, but hears a commotion behind him. He turns around to see that Park has been hit by a bicycle. He rushes her to the hospital, where Sana treats her injuries. Hyejun suspects that Juwon sent Park to spy on him and confronts her, saying, "Don't send anyone to check on me, we're fine." He then takes Park home. At the same time, Mr. Kim arrives at the hospital to take Sana out for lunch. He sees John holding Sana's hand, encouraging him to meet Hyejun. Mr. Kim assumes they are in love and invites John to join them for lunch. She agrees, takes his hand, and calls him Dad. They have lunch together, and Mr. Kim gets to know Jan better, growing fond of her. Meanwhile, Mr. Kim's assistant brings desserts to Juwon's shop and notices a doctor asking Juwon for a meeting. Juwon pretends to be busy. That evening, Mr. Kim sits with John and says, "I saw John today, and I think she likes Sana. I expect we'll hear some happy news soon." John replies, "She's a good girl." Mr. Kim adds, "My assistant saw the doctor and Juwon together, and I think we might soon celebrate our children's marriage as well." On the other hand, Hyejun has been standing near his mother's shop every day, watching from a distance to the point where locals start to notice him. His mother is seen meeting with her case lawyer, thanking him for standing by her. The lawyer tells her, "You've always been a good person." It is revealed that her good behavior was the reason for her release from prison. As the lawyer leaves, Mrs. Kang notices her son, Hyejun, and asks him to wait. Hyejun looks at his mother and says, "How long have I waited for you? Why didn't you come to me? I never imagined you'd live happily enough to start a relationship." His mother begins explaining everything that happened, but Hyejun grows angrier, believing that her distance was because she didn't want him. At that moment, John arrives and calms Hyejun down, telling him that his mother wasn't entirely at fault for what happened. This makes Hyejun decide to give her a second chance. Later, they all gather at John's house. John prepares a meal, and Sana and Juwon arrive, bringing joy to everyone. When Mrs. Kang sees them, she pretends she hasn't met them before and greets them warmly. They all enjoy the meal together. Afterward, the three friends go up to the rooftop while John and Mrs. Kang sit together. When Mr. Kim sees them sitting together, he leaves abruptly. The next day, Hyejun accompanies Park to the hospital to check on the condition of her legs. While there, John sees Hyejun and asks him to join her that evening, but Hyejun refuses, explaining that he has a dinner invitation. When John insists, Park grabs Hyejun's hand and walks away with him. Later, as they leave, Hyejun thanks Park, saying, "You saved me from John because I didn't want to go." At that moment, Park can't hold back and confesses, "I only pretended in front of John that I didn't care, but the truth is, I love you." Her voice is loud, filled with stress, and everyone nearby hears her. Embarrassed, Park runs away, telling him not to follow her. Park then goes to Juwon and tells her what happened. Juwon is shocked that Park was the first to confess her love. Shortly after, Hyejun arrives and hands Juwon some medicine before leaving. That evening, Sana and Juwon visit Hyejun, trying to get him to accept their relationship. However, Hyejun sets conditions, the first being that Juwon must call him uncle because she is his sister. At first, Sana refuses, but when he sees Hyejun threatening to deny their relationship, Sana kneels and says, "Uncle, uncle." Everyone bursts into laughter. At the same time, Mr. Kim and John call them over and suggest that Sana should pursue a relationship with John and that Ju-won should be with the shy doctor. "We just want to see you happy and hope to see grandchildren soon," they say. But everyone is shocked when Sana and Ju-won hold hands and reveal their relationship. Mr. Kim is thrilled, but John becomes angry, refuses to accept their relationship, and leaves. The group is puzzled by John's reaction. Hye-jun reassures them, saying, "Don't worry, I'll try to convince him." Later that night, Mr. Kim sits with John and asks, "Why are you against this?" John replies, "I know the issues that always exist between Sana and Ju-won." The two argue, each standing firm in their opinion. When John returns, he finds Sana waiting for him. Sana tries to reassure John, promising that there won't be any problems if he accepts their relationship. "I'll even report to you if there's an issue," Sana says, but John still refuses and goes to his room to sleep. Sana brings him water and then leaves. The next day, Ju-won goes to the shop and finds a broken light. As she tries to fix it, Sana approaches her from behind, startling her. She accidentally bumps her head on a tree, and Sana helps her by resting her head on the table. Ju-won is taken to the hospital where the doctor and her friends ask who caused her injury. Sana boldly replies, "It was my love." Everyone is shocked to hear about their relationship. Later, Hye-jun visits his mother and asks to live with her, but she responds, "Now is not the right time." He leaves to meet Park and they share a taxi. Hye-jun asks Park if she still enjoys life as she did during school. Park says yes, and Hye-jun replies, "You're like a sister to me," before leaving her. Park is heartbroken. Hye-jun then meets his friend who asks if he's in a relationship with Park. Hye-jun denies it, but his friend reveals that the whole school knows Park is in love with him. He also tells Hye-jun about the hardships Park has faced, which makes Hye-jun feel guilty. Meanwhile, Mr. Kim meets with his friend, who tells him about a father who bought an expensive gift for his son's wedding, which ultimately led to the son's approval. Inspired, Mr. Kim buys John some expensive fruits in hopes of getting him to approve his son's relationship. At that time, Mrs. Kang goes to meet John at a restaurant just as he is leaving. Unexpectedly, John bumps into Mrs. Kang and he catches her before she falls. However, as soon as Mr. Kim sees them, he quickly leaves. Mrs. Kang then goes inside to speak with John, telling him that her son, Hye-jun, has asked her to live with him. She adds, "I don't want people talking about us, especially since they already know that 20 years ago we were planning to marry." She asks John to talk to Hye-jun to prevent him from asking again, and then she leaves, leaving John visibly saddened. Meanwhile, Park is with her mother, crying as she confesses that she loved someone, but unfortunately, he rejected her. On the other hand, Sana calls his mother and says, "I'm coming over," but she hangs up without responding. Sana then sends Ju-won a message inviting her to dinner. However, Ju-won notices Sana's mother arriving at the store. Sana's mother asks Ju-won if she has a relationship with Sana. Ju-won admits that they are in a relationship. Sana's mother, clearly displeased, says something to Ju-won and leaves. As a result, Ju-won spends the whole night at the store and skips the dinner Sana had planned. The next day, Sana, realizing that Ju-won didn't come to the store, goes to find her. He sees her working with anger evident on her face, and she also seems feverish. Sana takes her home, asks Hye-jun to watch the store, and leaves. Unexpectedly, Park arrives at the store to pick up some items. She tells Hye-jun, "You're not my brother, and I don't want you to be. I don't want anything from you," and then leaves. Hye-jun is heartbroken. Later, Sana goes to his mother and tells her that he loves Ju-won. His mother coldly responds, "I don't care whether you love her or not," and goes to her room. Sana pleads with her to be happy and says, "I don't hate you, but I hate the sadness you live in," and then he leaves. That evening, Ju-won goes to her father and asks, "What does love mean?" Her father replies, "Love means you can't live without the person you love." Ju-won smiles and says, "That's exactly how I feel about Sana." The next day, Ju-won waits for Sana at the train station. When she sees him, she hugs him tightly. Sana asks her, "Why didn't you tell me that your mother came to the store and treated you poorly?" Ju-won replies, "It doesn't matter. I love you, and I don't care about what others say." Later, Ju-won visits the store with Hye-jun and informs him that important guests are coming, including Park and a new man her mother introduced to her. This time, the man is very handsome. Hye-jun suddenly becomes uneasy, realizing he might have lost something important. At that moment, Sana arrives and notices something is wrong with Hye-jun. He goes to Park to meet the new man and discovers that he plays basketball. Sana tells Hyejun that he too played basketball for many years in America. They agree to play a match together. The man accepts the challenge, and Hyejun calls his old school basketball teammate saying, "There's an important game, come join me." Both teams bring their players and the game begins. In the end, Hyejun's team wins. The man tells Hyejun, "Since you've won, I owe you dinner." But Hyejun replies, "I don't want dinner, I want something else." He then asks the man to leave Park alone. Afterward, Hyejun confesses to Park that he loves her. Park replies, "I love you too, but you're the one who chose someone else." Eventually, they start a relationship. That night, Mr. Kim asks John, "When will Mrs. Kang live with us? Don't you want to get married?" John explains that when she came to him, she said she didn't want anyone to talk about marriage, and he interpreted it as a rejection. "I don't want to pressure her," he adds. The next day, Mr. Kim calls his ex-wife to check on her. She tells him that she's planning to travel to America to help their daughter study there. Although Mr. Kim wanted her to come back to him, he lets her go and bids her farewell. Meanwhile, Ju-won goes to Mrs. Kang and apologizes for telling her 20 years ago, "I don't want a mother." She adds, "Now I want one." Indirectly, Ju-won gives her blessing for Mrs. Kang to marry her father. Later, Mrs. Kang visits John and says, "I'm ready to learn how to cook and take care of a home." John is surprised. Mrs. Kang, feeling shy, starts to leave, but John stops her and says, "I liked you from the moment I first saw you 20 years ago. I can't give you much, but I want to spend the rest of my life with you." She agrees. They begin preparing the apartment, and a month and a half later, they hold the wedding. Sana asks his father to go out, meet women, and marry one of them. His father replies, "I'm too shy for that, and I don't like mingling with women." Mr. Kim, who also dislikes mingling with women, starts learning how to sing and eventually becomes a singer who performs for older women. He gains many admirers among them. Meanwhile, Sana is with Ju-won when his sister calls to tell him that she and their mother will be traveling the next day. She asks if he wants to come along. Sana initially says no, but Ju-won convinces him by saying, "I know you love your mother and sister, and they need you now more than ever." She urges him to go and be with them while they get settled in the city. Sana agrees and travels with them. Sana and Ju-won continue to talk on the phone constantly. However, Park and Hyejun are always nearby, which makes Ju-won feel jealous of being alone. She asks Sana to come back. As time passes, Park and Hyejun grow closer, and they live happily together. The night before the wedding, everyone is eagerly waiting for Sana to return. Hyejun asks Ju-won to bring the rings from the house, as everyone is too busy preparing for the wedding the next day. When Ju-won arrives at the house, she sees Sana entering unexpectedly. It turns out he came home early to surprise her. Ju-won gets so caught up with Sana that she forgets the rings entirely. They end up spending the whole evening at the house together. The next day, everyone gathers at John's house to prepare for the wedding. Hyejun notices Ju-won is missing and quickly goes to her room. Just as he's about to enter, Sana walks out, which angers Hyejun. Sana explains that he came home early last night and spent time with Ju-won. John takes a leave of absence from work, saying, "It's our wedding in a month." Later, they retrieve the rings and head to the wedding. They take photos together, exchange rings, and Mr. Kim sings at the ceremony. They take many more pictures, and it becomes clear that they were meant to be a family all along. Here is the end of the drama. Subscribe for more videos like this one. Tap the bell icon to get the updates. Also like the video and type in the comment the next drama you would like.